Hello and welcome to Qtr Time podcast. I'm Lucy G.
And I'm Lucy P. And we're here to bring you all the netball goodness you never knew you needed.
Okay. Well, big welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our first live podcast of 2023. We are here, of course, to discuss the Jamaica versus England Test Series. We are recording this live on Monday, 16th of January in the evening UK time, with the final test having taken place just last night. Before we give a proper introduction to our star-studded panel and dive into some questions, Luce, give me an overview of what your key takeaways were from the series.
Yeah, well, I think it was really interesting. From an England perspective, I guess my headline is about the youngsters stepping up, including Cheen and Fadoju. And for me, I think that the main takeaway is how Imogen Allison also should definitely be in that Netball World Cup squad. I think she's done enough now to cement her place, given what we saw from her, particularly in the centre position. And then from a Jamaica perspective, obviously a big improvement from them in terms of test 1 to test 2. And obviously you mustn't forget that they haven't got their big guns of Sterling and Wilson in the side for this series. And so I think they're going to be pretty deadly when it comes to the Netball World Cup. And final thing for me, I also wouldn't be surprised to see Crystal Plummer picked up somewhere in the next few years, as she was obviously heavily penalised and sent off in that final test. But the work that she was doing defensively in that wing defence position for Jamaica, really, really interesting. And I liked seeing her in centre a little bit as well. So, yeah, the future is bright for Jamaica.
Yeah, she was a bit of a standout for me, but we've got a question around her performance specifically, so we'll come back to her in a bit. But just a few housekeeping bits before we get stuck into it with our panel. As we mentioned, this space is being recorded for any netball fans who aren't able to listen live, and it will be released as a cheeky little bonus episode in the next couple of days. If you want to send in your questions or comments, my lovely co-host Lucy P will be monitoring the hashtag. We're going for ENGVJAM, so IngVJam. Please do share thoughts, questions, comments, musings, unpopular netball opinions. We love to see it, and we'll try and shout out as many of them as possible. As always, the athletes that we are about to be talking about are real people who have real feelings and may listen to this live or on playback. So please bear that in mind with any comments or thoughts you send in. And as always, please be respectful at all times, which we are anyway, because we're a good bunch. So it looks like we're still having a couple of issues with the lovely Rob Wright, so we'll welcome him on when he's able to make it. But we do have former England captain and Sky Sports and BBC commentator Pamela Cookey and former Silver Fern Cat Tuivaiti. How are you both doing?
Hello. Oh, very well. Pleased obviously with the results that the Roses had over these past couple of test matches to come out with a win. They were under a lot of pressure to do so. So for them to cross the line with some great performances, and as Lucy was saying earlier, some real key standout players, which I think bodes well for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And how are you, Kat?
I'm good, thank you. It was nice to have some netball on the TV. My kids and my husband did not give a hoot, so they made it quite hard to watch. But luckily, I'm an expert at ignoring them. So it was really good to watch some netball, and it was interesting throughout the whole thing, through mid-game and even game to game, with Jamaica squaring it up after the second test. It made it quite it would have been so cool to be there. I know the crowds went off, so I hope everyone enjoyed the game if they were there.
Yeah, for sure. I never want England to lose, but in that second game, I was a little bit like, oh, it would be super juicy if Jamaica could win this and set us up really nicely for the last day. Yeah. It was a bit of a fairy tale series for England in that respect. But before we just really deep dive into those England games, I just want to give a quick shout out to the England A, England Futures, England Thorns, and of course Scotland, who all participated in warm-up matches and curtain raisers and really put on some fantastic displays of netball. We only managed to catch the Future Roses Thorns game on the Sunday, and yeah, it was absolutely fantastic. So lots of great netball on display. Now, moving on to Roses versus Sunshine Girls. To try and make sure we cover as much of the series as possible, we're going to look at this game by game, as I think, Kat, as you've alluded to already, each game had quite a different narrative, and I think there's lots of varying talking points to come out of each of the three games. It is worth noting, as you mentioned, Luce, earlier, that both teams were missing a few big names. More so for Jamaica, they were missing Shamira Sterling, Latanya Wilson, Dean Thomas. England, of course, missing Ellie Cardwell, who is a massive out for them, and we're missing Jo Harton following that first Test series, as she picked up an injury in that one. We also picked up some really cool stats, didn't we, Luce, just about the sort of matchups between England and Jamaica as a whole. Do you want to run us through some of those before we look at the first game?
Yeah, for sure. So England scored far superior on caps, 891 to Jamaica's 431, which is pretty intense. And Jamaica with 5 players on 2 or fewer caps coming into the series and a few debuts. England average age 28 to Jamaica's 25, and Jamaica had actually won 6 of the last 10 meetings, which I thought was really interesting stat as well. And 2021 was actually England's first series win against Jamaica since 2013, and that series also was a 2-1 victory to the Roses. That was sort of Cardwell's breakout series, I guess, just before we went into the quad series last year.
Yeah, so much history between these two sides. It's always a fiery affair, isn't it? So the first test, it was a massive England win, 73-52. And I found this one really fascinating, probably the most fascinating out of all of the tests. I don't think that we saw the same, I suppose, never say die Jamaica side that we saw win silver medal at Commonwealth Games. I just felt like the entire team had switched off really in the second half in particular, and they dropped their heads quite a lot. I can see that Rob is now in the space. We're just working on getting him as a speaker, but while we get that sorted, Pam, I'm going to come to you first, as you've obviously played Jamaica many a time in your playing career. What did you make of this first game?
Wow, it was crazy.
It was so crazy.
I think for me, it was that kind of Jamaica coming off the back of not having a Sterling, not having a Wilson, the New Zealand series where was just cray-cray, and all the issues with the visas. I think they came into this just a little bit higgledy-piggledy, and that first quarter, they just kind of flew out the blocks. England, a lot of pressure on them. There's lots of talk on Jess's role, on players that have been picked, on everything. And you could really sense the pressure that they were all under. And I think that took its toll for them in that first quarter. Hence, Jamaica kind of swung out the blocks. But then you saw a Jamaica of old. Like you say, I've played against them many, many a times. And if you can kind of get that lead, enough of a lead, their heads drop. But that, like I say, was a Jamaica of old. We haven't seen that recently in the likes of the Commonwealth Games or some of the series beforehand. So it was interesting to see that happen again in that first game. And then where I really just was blown away was that last quarter from England. That was, how can Jamaica just score 5 goals? I've never seen that before, especially when you've got that prolific shooter of Janelle Fowler, world's best. But they just couldn't feed her. She was forced to come out of the circle. The passes that were going in were off the mark. Williams, who I thought played amazing in that second test, that first one, you just saw her head kind of drop and she didn't really know what to do. But it was because of that pressure of England. And I love the defensive combination of Alison, Guskov, Adoju, Harvey, youngster, also did her part in that back, and they really made that transverse line lockdown. And then if I can go on to the shooting end as well, attacking end, they only missed one shot. And even that one shot that they missed They got the defensive pressure and they got the turnover. There was only 2 times that the ball didn't get into the circle for a shot. And the body movement, the space they created, they got Jamaica's heads turning. They were going wide. Then someone would come up with the middle. There was multiple offers. There wasn't that fight. Sometimes when I played against Jamaica, you kind of get bogged down with the body on body. But if you can come off them and make them start looking for you, then you can really get their heads moving and find some space for yourself. And I think that England team really did that in that final quarter of that first test.
Yeah, I mean, 24-5 it was in that final quarter, which, like you say, with Janelle Fowler under the goalpost, like that is just unheard of, and pretty phenomenal to witness. I suppose, Kat, I'm marking you down as our neutral for this this particular series. What was your take on this first game?
I thought this game, like a lot of what Pam said, I totally agree with. I think traditionally, and I'm talking about 3 or 4 years ago, Jamaica were notorious for coming out, and Jamaicans are so athletic. It's really slightly annoying. They can jump so high. They are so fast. They're so quick. But they would notoriously drop towards the back end of the game. So they would slowly start spraying the ball, and then they'd start yelling at each other, and then they'd start to drop their heads. And I feel like throughout the whole game, while they started strong, they showed us, them of old, which is what Pam touched on. And I totally agree. That's exactly what I saw. The fingers were coming out, everyone was pointing, and you could see that there was, a bit of tension there because they were just trying to work things out. And so I do feel that while, you wonder sometimes why you can't get the ball to Janelle, I felt like that England defensive line shut down the flow of the ball. So they made it really hard for them to even see. They made it really hard for Jamaica to actually catch the ball, to get in a good position to see her. She could have been 8 feet and they still wouldn't have got the ball to her because so much work was being done. And again, like Pam said, if you did fast forward a little bit to the second game, Jamaica learnt. And so I think that's what really happened to them in that game. And again, in that first quarter, I feel like maybe every English fan was just tightening up a little bit after what we saw Helen and Joe produced in that first quarter. I feel like, we have such huge expectations for them as a combination. When they don't deliver, it's like, oh God, like now what are we going to do? So I think, they really got shut down by Jamaica. But again, once England clicked into gear and they started finding their connections and they stopped turning the ball over, Jamaica really started to freak out and exposed a few things. But I think throughout the court and throughout the whole series, I believe that there are a lot of learnings because there are some holes in both teams. So it was actually quite cool to see people on the court that you probably wouldn't be on the court if they had some of their big guns in. So that was kind of cool. Everyone got put in really uncomfortable situations, which set us up for a good second and third match.
Yeah, 100%. And that last comment you just made about people getting court time who maybe wouldn't necessarily, I think Dehaney is the sort of standout example of that, who I thought she was exceptional this series, actually. The way she was able to get her feet round the body, her outside arm was just an absolute menace. But do you think with the, looking at that second half and that final quarter score, what do you think it was that caused Jamaica to really drop their heads? Like, was it the fact that they were missing their big guns? Do you think they were just overwhelmed by the power and the ferocity that England were coming at them with? Was it inexperience? What do you think it was? I'll come to you, Pam, for this one. What was kind of the main factor as to why they just dropped their heads so completely?
Yeah, I think it was all of the above. In terms of, Connie Francis mentioned fitness all the way through this series and coming into it. They weren't at the top of the game. They hadn't had the time together and the amount of time to work on that aspect of the game that they had pre-Commonwealth Games. So that played in a fact. Also, the inexperience of their midcourt. They're so young. I think only Fowler and Malaysia Kelly are in their 30s. Everyone else is like early 20s. Mid-20s, and then you've got a couple of teens. So I don't think they had that experience to be able to go, okay, this is happening to us at the moment. How can we do it ourselves on court? And that's what I think we saw in the second, flicking between the two, in the second test match, where Connie was able to, she'd already planned she was going to do those rotations. So each time they came off the court, I think I could see her like giving them instruction, the rest of the coaches giving them instructions, and they knew they were going to come back on court and they had a job to do. And that first test, I don't think they had that. So they lost their structure. They lost that kind of ability to stick to task, and they were making changes that they potentially hadn't been planned. And then your heads go, they're in chase mode. And then England just, like I said on the commentary, they were ruthless. They saw that was happening and they really capitalised on it, and they really brought down their unforced errors.
Yeah, and I suppose when your opposition's just coming at you like that, it's like a steam train. You know, I think it'd be nigh on impossible for almost anyone to be able to try and stop that and combat that. And, you know, if a classy side like Jamaica aren't able to combat that, I'm not sure who is. It's just one of those things. But someone mentioned, one of you mentioned Fadoju as well, in that defensive lineup, as she had a really unenviable task of starting as goalkeeper in this game against Fowler at just 5'9", just 1 inch taller than me, slight brag. And obviously Fowler is 6'6", I think she is. Kat, what are your thoughts on this decision to have Fadoju starting in goalkeeper when there is such a significant height difference?
I mean, if you want to be the best, you have to play against the best. And she wasn't hung out to dry. That kid knows what she's doing. I think playing on someone like Janelle we know Fadoju can jump. What she didn't do was come out for any intercepts, but also no one was pushing the feeders back for her to have a go at something else. So her only chance at the ball was in the air, which I thought was at a disadvantage to her from a technical point of view, but like physically she can actually do it. I've seen some disgusting stills of her getting up and over Janelle, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, she can get there. So yeah, from a structural point of view, I thought it's a lot to ask from her to just have her have like a jumping fight with one of the tallest people on earth. But at the same time, she did so well. She held her own, and when they're in the circle together, her and when Layla Gusgoth would drop in and they would start to rotate that circle, I think it caused a bit more of a headache for Janelle. But again, you know, once that ball's in the air, you're less than likely to get it. So I thought it would have been nicer for her and for the team structure to maybe send the ball into the pocket a little bit and have her hunt, because she can also do that.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably one of her strengths. Sorry, Pam, were you going to say something then?
No, exactly that. Yeah, totally. I think, she's lethal, isn't she? And for one so young, she's just, each time stepping on court, she just shows us something else that she can do. I do prefer her in goal defence, though, I won't lie, because it allows her to hunt more, and it allows her to, she's got a nice attacking game on her as well, but she really did do a job. And especially when the attackers had that 3 foot mark over us through the through court defence, it gave her time to really sight that ball coming in and be able to go for those jumps. But like Kat was saying, she's got hops for fun, but 9 times out of 10, that ball can still go in, and I think that's a bit wasted.
Yeah, and I think we saw a real difference in terms of how she played goalkeeper compared to how Alice Harvey played goalkeeper. Obviously, with her incredible elevation, I think we saw her contesting the ball in the air as much as she could, more so than Alice, who did a fantastic job keeping Janelle really high up in the circle for all of the times where she was on as goalkeeper. So 2 very different styles of play from them, but equally both as effective, I would say. And just quickly, Rob, I know you can hear me. You are on my account. I've sent you an invite to speak, which I think should pop up maybe towards the bottom of your screen. So if you just accept that invite, and then you should be able to jump on and give us all of your juicy analysis of the Jamaica team in particular. So while Rob hopefully is able to check that out, Luce, what have we got on the hashtag?
Yeah, we've got a couple of thoughts coming in. Faith Florence has said, I like to think it was us in the powerhouse Northern crowd that propelled England into the stratosphere, which I love as well, because it was sounded like an awesome crowd up in Manchester. Definitely want to see more fixtures happening up in the Northwest. Kirsty has said, great to see Harton back, but does the performance of her and Liv now mean we have a GA hole if we take Cardwell and Houseby to World Cup? I would say it's a good problem to have, but also we've seen how deadly Ellie Cardwell can be in goal attack, and you could also have Harton in goal attack as well. So I think there's still options there. Would you agree, Luce?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Cardwell's more than proved herself as a goal attack option, and of course Houseby is probably our first choice goal attack. But then you've also got an SDL as well. I suppose the question is whether she would be selected to go to the World Cup with such a plethora of talent. Is a great headache to have. But before we move on to the second test, another thing that I noticed about this game in particular in the post-match interview was I suppose a difference in the attitude of Jess Thirlby as head coach. I felt like there was a bit of a shift towards being more publicly committed to wanting to win, as opposed to this, being here to compete, which I think we heard a few times, particularly with the Australia series, and was something that really sort of got my goat. I don't think we should ever just be there to compete. We should always be there to win, and we should always have that belief that we're going to win. But it did feel like we had a bit of a shift from her to sort of be that way inclined this series. Kat, with all of your experience within the Ferns and as our neutral today, what's your view on where England are in terms of mentality at the moment?
I think that's a really tricky thing to assess from the outside. And I would even go as far to assume that Pam, being an English netball legend, also couldn't comment on couldn't really decipher that from the outside, because it's such a different vibe from when we played. And it's not like it was 30 years ago, but there's so much more pressure. There's so many more options. Coaches are looking for such incredibly specific things that it can change the mentality of everyone around you. And George Fisher is someone that is also sitting there. I don't know if she's putting her hand up. There are things that we just don't know from the outside that I think, as a player, when I used to see what people thought and see what people thought we were thinking, were just two completely different things. And it used to piss me off because it wasn't real. So it's very hard. I know what you're talking about, and I know how you can dance around words and you want to say the right thing, but you don't want to be cocky, but you also don't want to make it look like you're trying to surrender. But I think Jess is she was in a really awkward position before this series, just to prove what she was doing with this team, and has kind of shown us with having some of her big guns out, what she wants from her team. And structurally, I could see what she was trying to achieve in certain areas of the court. So I think she's finally excited about having, like you said, some of these headaches in these areas, because if we look at the defensive end too, with Jiva coming back in and just saying, yeah, move over, kids, I'll do it. It's like, man, that's another headache. So I think, I think she should be quite excited about going forward, because it's a really important year for England, and I think they're in a really good spot at the moment.
Yeah, what are your thoughts, Pam?
Yeah, totally concur with what Kat said. Exactly that. It's, as a player and as a squad, you know what you're talking about in the back scenes. You know what you're trying to do as a squad. You know what your targets are. You know what things are working and things what need to be tweaked at. And then when you go out on that game day and you just want to put it out and show all the stuff that you've been working on. And I think for the Roses, the latter part of 2022, so coming off the Commonwealth Games and that Australia series, it didn't work for them. And I think there was still a little bit of a hang up from that Commonwealth Games, and so much talk was going on and so much pressure that you almost have to now go back into your bubble. And I think I saw that in this series. The England team just really went back into their bubble, and they just were thinking about themselves and just focusing on what they were trying to do. And you heard that in kind of Layla's interview when she got player of the series. It was, this is our we stuck to task. We believed in what we were trying to do, and we executed that as much as we needed to. And that's just, I think, where they are now. And that's why I think you've seen that shift in that mentality and that confidence growing with them as a squad. They're now just in their bubble.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point and a really astute observation. I think moving on to the second test, just conscious of time, we've already whizzed our way through 25 minutes. Test 2 was a confidence boosting win for Jamaica, and quite frankly, I think they just blew England out the water in quarters 2 and 3. Pam, what was the difference between Test 1 and Test 2 for the Sunshine Girls in this game?
Well, I think Connie just had a masterclass in terms of how she used that squad. She knew they weren't all going to survive a whole game. Dixon Rochester, how she was even playing, I don't even know, based on the look on her face and the way that ice pack grew each time she came off the court. She just rotated that midcourt really well. And I think, again, from experience of playing Jamaica in the past, when you kind of get on them, they then come out with fight, and they have that real kind of drive again. And we saw a lot of more contact calls. The body came out. They were more on it, and I think they just really wanted to prove that they weren't a team that had the quarter 4 that they did in Test 1, and came out strong.
Kat, what do you think?
Man, look, now I do think Janelle Fowler is the greatest shooter on earth at the moment. But the bigger issue that let them down in game 1 was not the issue in the second game, and that was the service of ball to her, which was just on, like, every time. And they were all long balls again, but I think with the understanding that it is going to come long. And yeah, she was being pushed high because Alice Harvey.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, yes. She started that game. So she was on to body up against Janelle Fowler, and so she was pushed a little bit higher. So that ball went straight into Janelle and then out and then back in. So that was kind of a flow that was happening throughout the game. She was being allowed the ball at the top of the circle, but then once that ball went back out and Janelle stormed back underneath the hoop, no one was going to stop her. But I just thought Khadijah Williams, she was incredible. I thought her possession must be really, really high because she's always up in that centre third. She must be tired. But she was on that game. I really enjoyed watching her. That second quarter to Jamaica, they won that one by 10. So they really put their foot down in that quarter, and they just had to maintain from there, which is, again, I was a little bit nervous about seeing Jamaica fall back into their patterns because they can get on top of teams early and then they start to do stuff to themselves and they just start to unravel, but they never did. With all the changes, like Pam said, that Connie was making, that is a recipe for disaster. There's someone new. They do something different. We're not running that centre pass. I thought, oh, God, here we go. There's someone else on. What's going to happen? But it was like methodical. It's like they all knew they were coming on for a certain amount of time. They knew what they were supposed to do and when they were supposed to do it. And it just looked like it was on purpose. And England had no answers. And we can argue that Joe didn't play that game. Harton was getting ragdolled around the circle. The defence was really young. They kept changing it. But I just, again, the theme that I liked throughout this series is that these people are getting on court for both teams and they are being put in the hot box and trying to figure out what to do when they're in it. So I thought on the whole, it was a great game of netball, but I thought, yeah, Jamaica definitely deserved to win that game. It was really nice.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, the shout out to Khadijah Williams for that test. She did have the most feeds on court with 20. Beckford was really close behind with 17, and Dixon Rochester hot on her heels with 15. There wasn't really a standout feeder for England, which was, maybe that was part of the problem. I don't know. But how difficult is it when you've got such a high level of rotations of people coming on and off court over and over again to be able to stick to your guns and execute what it is that the coach is telling you to do? Like, with that level of rotation, that must be really tough. I mean, Pam, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. But it's almost like what's the short an interval session, isn't it? But for Jamaica, they knew that was their job for that game, and I think knowing that in advance and that ability to come on, do your job for a little bit, knowing you were going to come off, get some more advice, especially for the youngsters, have a little rest, and then come back on again. I think that worked so well for them, and then playing against that, your flow just stops, which is what they did so well. They every change meant there was a hold in play, and then you had to set yourself up again, and then you had someone else that you were marking against who was doing something a little bit different. So for England, that disruption, I think, stemmed, I keep saying, their flow, where they'd got some momentum in that test one. They weren't able to do that as much. And just as Kat said, I thought Khadija Williams, I have not seen her play like that for a very long time. For the whole 60 minutes, sometimes you just see her drop and those passes go away. But in that game, she was really, really pinpoint and so quick off the mark on those centre passes.
Yeah, she was pure fire in that game. Really outstanding performance. We are, I promise everyone, we are really, really trying to get Rob onto the speaking panel. We just can't seem to get him on. Rob, if you're listening, I'm sure you can hear us. On the bottom left-hand corner, there should be a request to speak. If the invite to speak isn't coming through, you can request to speak yourself. So give that a go if you can, and then hopefully we can get you on. But we've spoken a bit about the attacking end for this game, but I want to take a little look at the defensive end. Now, when I looked at the statistics for this game, I was blown away by the number of penalties that England had, to the point that I'm still not 100% convinced that they're actually correct. England had a whopping 97 penalties to Jamaica's 65. The most on court was Fumi Fidoju with 32, followed by Alice Harvey with 22, and then Crystal Plummer was the most for Jamaica with 16. So huge disparity there in terms of the amount of whistle that was each side was attracting. I think perhaps it's no coincidence then that England also lost this game with the most penalties against them. But I think, if we speak a lot about Fumi Fidoju because she's just so outstanding, but she's usually such a clean player. Pam, what do you think it was in this particular game that was drawing so much attention from the umpire?
Good question.
I can't put my finger on it.
Yeah,
I really don't know.
I think they're actually just their penalties on the shot.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say.
Because there's a whistle every time Janelle takes a shot. Alice Harvey was getting absolutely nailed on every shot that Janelle took, but the shot went in. So I'm assuming that penalty still counts. Well, it still stands, because if she had a miss, she'd get to reset it. And that's why those two, as soon as you started talking, I was like, yeah, it's just on Janelle. Like, next, like, I don't think she coughed the ball up that many times.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, a really interesting one. And, speaking of defence, we saw Guskov go off and then re-enter with a very stylish bandage to the head. And we also saw Housby take a knock to the knee, re-enter, and then go off again for the rest of the game after another knock to the same knee in the same place at the start of the fourth quarter. But for me personally, Housby, this was one of the best performances I think I'd seen from her for quite a while, on the international scene in particular. Like, what do you think it was that made her so effective this time round, Pam?
Well, even before the series started, you could just see she had a game face on. Like, she just wiped everything off in the past and was like, this series, we must win. And I will hold my hand. I will say Housby can go missing every now and again, and others around her have to like step up. And she's there for the last minute goal to seal it and win it. But I really thought this series she supported the youngsters in the circle with her. So like your Liv Sheen, she was on point for her shots. Even that second test, she was 7 out of 7, I think. So she still got 100%. And then she was making herself available. She was on the move. She was drawing space, and those shooter-to-shooter balls, whether it was to Jo or to Liv, I thought was pinpoint. And I really loved watching her this series.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, to see in that first game, Hart and Housby, or H2 as they're affectionately known. To see them sort of back on form, I think was really special, and there was something almost like quite sentimental about it as well. I know we've jumped games now, but I'm going to just stick on this for a little bit. Kat, what is it about the H2 combo that, when it works, it really works? Why is that?
I think they know each other inside out. And so when in the first game, in the first quarter, when it was all falling to bits, I think it was a little bit of nerves, because it's been a while since we've seen them play together at an international level, and a lot has happened, and so they've kind of gone away a little bit. But then when it clicked back in, it was like, yeah, you're not going to break that now. So they've come together, and Jamaica are really in danger. So I think they have an awesome connection, and they know what each other's going to do before each other does it. But what I really like is that Helen Housby's game changes with Liv Cheen, because I think those two, the style that they play suits each other. Whereas with H2, they know each other very well. So it looks seamless. But I think that with Helen and Liv, they get to help each other shine. And so it creates something a little bit different for us to see. And it also is quite successful if it's done right, and they're both on. So I thought it was really nice to see. It was really awesome. And Nat Metcalf out the front, I think, is awesome. For whoever's on the inside, she is an absolute magician, and she needs to be on the court a bit more often.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting point. That there's been a lot of talk recently about the midcourt for England in particular, with Chelsea Pittman, Nat Metcalf, and I think this series raised a lot of questions as well. In Test 1, we saw Pittman enter the game halfway through. I think it was the final quarter. And for me, in that game, she just completely changed it. I think she played with an air of freedom and creativity that differed to what Nat was giving us previously in that game. But then in Test 2, Pittman was subbed off after the second quarter. She was really struggling to get the ball in. She had 3 unforced errors. And then Nat came back on and played a blinder. We then also saw Elle McDonald come on in centre, got her first cap in Test 3. Kat, who do you think provides the best answer for England in this midcourt? And do you think there's enough room for both Nat and Chelsea to go to South Africa for the World Cup?
Well, I'm not sure if Laura Malcolm is injured, why we didn't see her. But I think that is the bigger question a little further up the court. Nat and Chelsea offer two completely different things, and they're both beautiful at different times. So I think the bigger problem will be a little bit further up the court, and whether she wants a defensive centre or an attacking centre. And that's where, you'll see whether she will take Elle McDonald. You'll see where she reaches in and takes Laura Malcolm. I don't know. Imo, I think, has done enough to cement her place there, but she's also a defensive centre. So I think, again, she's got a great problem, Jess, to try and figure this stuff out. But yeah, I thought you're right. Chelsea came on and absolutely changed it, but her timing versus Nat's timing is very different. So the game called for Chelsea, who is not as quick, and I don't mean that in a horrible way. Her timing is very different, and so she ends up on the circle early and she stays there a little bit longer, whereas Nat zips around. She's like, no, I'm leaving. And so it actually changes what's happening around her. So combination-wise, if gun to my head, you're going to make me pick a wing attack, I'd take
Yes,
Nat.
I am.
I'd take Nat. I love me some Chelsea Pittman, but I want the ball in Nat's hands.
So there's not space for both of them to go to World Cup, do you think?
It would be dependent for me what she wants to do in the middle.
Yeah. And Pam, what do you think of that?
Chelsea Pittmans, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I thought Nat was beautiful in the series, but it's a tough one, because I also think, with all those points Kat was saying about their difference, that when you're in a World Cup, it almost sometimes needs that, because in the Commonwealth Games, Nat did struggle a little bit with that Australian defence, and being able to get those lovely long drives that we saw her, and maybe making that switch with a Chelsea would have kind of changed it up a bit, allowed her to have a look and then re-enter the game. But the problem they're both, yes, Nat plays goal attack, but she hasn't had much time with England at goal attack. And there's such great competition at the moment in that shooting end. Would you replace one of your shooters for Nat? I'm not sure you would. So yeah, it's a very tricky one, and that's why I'm not a coach. But I did appreciate both of them and what they can do against different styles, and some of the control that Chelsea brings to that squad is beneficial. But it's that centre, like Kat was saying, that centre position is going to be key to determine what happens in that wing attack spot.
I think that's a really interesting observation. I hadn't sort of thought about it from that perspective about, do we have a particularly attacking centre, or do we have more of a defensive centre, and then the relationships and how that balances on court. And obviously we did see Elle McDonald make her debut in centre in that third test. I've kind of jumped forward a little bit now. What do you think Elle brought to the centre position that differed from the likes of Imogen Allison, Jade Clark, Laura Malcolm, etc.? I'll come to you first, Pam.
I liked her. I think she's I would say she's more of a defensive centre, though. I think she's still learning her through court attack, and I think some of those touches on her pass into the circle were just, that's something that's going to grow with the more court time she gets. But not quite at that level yet of an Imo, I would say. And I think in the past I would have said that same thing about Imogen. Like last season, amazing defensively, like she gets ball for fun and out of nowhere, and we've seen that multiple times. But where she did lack was just that, again, touch and that timing. Some of those passes that went skying off the back line at crucial times, or didn't quite get to a shooter when they needed to. Those are the things that I've seen her change completely from last season into this test series, and I think she's really made a name for herself, and she's definitely one that should be on that team list.
I mean, that was one of the questions that we had in actually from Charlotte Cornforth. Thank you for sending your question in. She asked who would be your starting centre for England for the quad series. So would you say Imogen Allison then?
I think she played herself into that position. Jess gave her the time, and she believed in her and gave her that confidence, and she took it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And Jess, actually, when we did the post-match interview in the mix zone afterwards, she said that for Elle McDonald, it was a really meaningful exposure for her, and that it would help Jess to make better judgments on her and support her moving forwards. So given that was obviously her first test cap, she is going out to quad series with the squad, but even if she plays every single game there, she'll only have a max of 4 additional caps in total. Kat, do you reckon that she has a realistic chance of making the Netball World Cup squad, or do you think it's almost a little bit too late for her introduction and we haven't been able to see enough of her to be able to make that decision?
Yeah, like she'd have to play every game and be absolutely phenomenal in the combination she's on with, I think, to get a look in, because she is quite new to the international stage, and all the middies are fighting it out as it is. I mean, we're talking about which wing attack would be the best one to take, and there's a lot of people in that team vying for a spot. So I don't think Jess would be wasting her time taking her to the quad series if she didn't intend on seeing what she could do at that level. There's going to be some awesome competition over there for her to get a feel against New Zealand, South Africa. It's going to be such a melting pot of talent that I do hope she gets on the court so we can see what more she can do. I do believe, though, that it might be a little bit too late for her. I thought her timing suited Nat, so Nat could actually stand up and take a lot of those balls on the circle edge, and she could help Nat get on the edge to service the circle. So, I think it's a little bit more about the combination and how she fits into it that Jess will have to make a decision on.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I really liked what I saw from Elle. I was really pleasantly surprised. I thought she took on the body really, really well. She wasn't afraid to sort of really go in for the challenge. The only thing that I a slight critique that I had is that sometimes I found she was almost hanging outside a little bit too much. She was a little bit too wide, and I wanted her to kind of get a little bit more stuck in and do some of those long drives that we see from a Nat Metcalf, obviously a wing attack, different position. But yeah, very, very keen to see how she goes in Quad Series. And don't forget, for you guys listening as well, if you want to share your thoughts, questions, comments, please do use the hashtag ENGVJAM, so IngVJam, and the lovely Lucy P is keeping a keen eye on those. Now, we've spoken a lot about the midcourt. I'm just going to sort of stick on it for a little bit longer. We did see, as we've said, a fair amount of rotation in the England midcourt, but we also saw a lot of rotation in Jamaica's midcourt throughout the series as well. And we had a question from TDK on Instagram. Sorry, I don't know what your full name is. It was a question around specialists versus versatile players. So again, looking forward to Netball World Cup, because that's always the end goal. That's what we're here for. How do you balance that selection of specialists, particularly with respect to wing attack and wing defence, versus players who can kind of, those versatility players who can swing across any mid-court position? I'm going to come to you for this, Kat, with your coaching hat on.
Yeah, I think we can be good at two positions, but I think to ask players to be exceptional at three, I think is a lot. I think it's really hard. But then you got to get specific with it. I mean, if we just narrow it down to centre, and I'm going to pick on Serena Kirsten here. She started off as a wing D, and she had the legs to run out at centre, and greatest wing D ever. Man, she could pick ball up, circle edge. She's a menace. She couldn't pass the ball to save her life for a year or two. She had to learn how to do that, and she finally kind of became someone that was so reliable with the ball. Still got a little bit funny, would spray it from the center of the court, but that's her learning in another position, and I think that made her extraordinarily dangerous and really expensive for any other team to try and have, because not many people can do stuff like that. So being able to cover two positions, I think, is important. And when it gets hard is when you are a wing attack or a wing D, because do you move back into the circle or do you move forward into the centre court? And that's where it gets quite hard. But I mean, I mentioned it earlier about Jess maybe having to figure out what kind of centre she wants, because she's got defensive ones, but does she really have attacking ones? A lot of them have come from the defensive end. Imo is so much like Serena. I'm sure she loves hearing it every day. But she is also learning how to finesse her passes into the circle. Laura Malcolm, same thing. She's getting better and better, but she is a defensive player. So I think that's an interesting journey. And it's an interesting thing for a coach to have to try and decipher and pick out and see what kind of game plan she wants to run, because that's where you start to think, is it going to be Nat or Chelsea? Because my centres are a little bit more defensive inclined, so I need someone who's pinpoint accurate and will actually thread this needle.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And, Laura Malcolm springs to mind here. Obviously, I think she is a world-class wing defence. I think she's a very good centre, but her wing attack game, I think, is still, there's still room for development. But obviously, we've seen not so much sort of the back end of last year, but particularly 2021, I think it was, we saw a lot of her in wing attack and just trying to hone her craft in that position. Do you think that Malcolm has done enough to be able to book herself a spot on that plane to South Africa, being able to cover two positions, well, one position exceptionally, another position really well, and then a third position okay or good enough? Do you reckon she'll be on the plane?
I think that was wasted time trying to make Laura into wing attack.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's really unfortunate for her. And you're not going to say no thanks. You're just going to get out there and do it. And I'm sure she was working her little buns off to try and be a great wing attack. Laura Langman, I remember she refused to play wing attack. And silly me, I'm like, hey, you're the fittest person in this room. Just play wing attack. It's just a little bit different. She said, Katie, I can't see the post. So on centre pass, the fact that she couldn't see the post freaked her out, and she just could not do it. And she refused to do it, and she just would fight her way out of conversations about thinking about it. So I think, like I mentioned, if you are going to ask players to be good at three positions, you're really putting them at a disadvantage. A wing D centre is where I see her most definitely. I think she started to come into her own as a centre. She was great on defence, and again, she needed to just work on that finesse on the attack. But I haven't seen enough of. I don't know what happened. It would have been really cool to see a little bit more of her. Hopefully, we get to see her at the Quad Series, because I think she's critical. She's vital to see where the missing link is and if it's going to be her.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. It would be fascinating to see how much court time she does get over in South Africa for Quad Series. But I mean, speaking of the midcourt, if we take a look at Jamaica, we did see a suspension for wing defence Plummer. She was the most penalised player for Jamaica in Test 1 and 2, the second most penalised player for Jamaica in the third game, but most penalised overall for Jamaica. And I think although she was really highly penalised, how many times can I say penalised in a sentence? God, I've just said it about 7 times then. Although she did get a lot of whistle, I think she showed so much promise, and I think she's a really exciting future talent for Jamaica. Pam, how important would the court time that she got, how important would that be to her, particularly having to learn that really hard lesson via that suspension? How valuable was that to her?
Oh, really valuable. And like you said, I thought she was a standout, and she was also a standout in the America qualifiers. I was watching that as well. And for one so young, she's really starting to learn the craft of the game. She's super fit, well, compared to some of the others in that centre court. And it's just about her now just honing those skills and being a little bit more disciplined. And I think if she spent some time with Rob, he'll start to work some of the magic like he did with Wilson and Sterling, where she will get that structure. She'll be more clear on her timing, when to go for ball, when to pull out. I think in terms of that suspension and then the sending off, that's inexperience. And she will know that. I remember Sarah Bayman got sent off when we were under 21s. She twice actually, but that but for her, that learning in terms of, okay, this has happened, it has that effect on the team, whether it was justified or not. I now know I need to just change up a bit in terms of how I play. And well, look at the player that she became. Not saying that was what did it for her, but it's something that you learn from, and then you'll move through. And she's had it now. She's learned from it. Her team would have spoken to her about it and how to change if that situation would come up again. And I think she'll be better for her. I think, a definite future star for the Jamaican side.
Yeah, it reminds me of Latanya Wilson, when she was at Dragons. I don't think the game that she actually got suspended on was shown, but they did show a little clip of the challenge that she did that led to her suspension. But, the following year she got signed to Thunderbirds, and we can see how much she's grown from there. So it does sort of remind me of her in a bit. So no doubt a star for the future for sure.
It shows like she's fearless. Really, and if you watch her, you just see her. She's watching the ball, she's watching players, looking for where to go and hunt, and her timing's just is off at the moment. But she'll learn, like you say, just like Latanya.
Yeah, for sure. I'm a little bit conscious of time, so I'm just going to move us on slightly. One of the other things that I wanted to talk about from an England perspective, a sort of key takeaway from this series for me was a lack of consistency from England. If you take a look at the individual quarter scores, I won't run through them all now, but they vary so wildly, and we have these frequent, huge swings in momentum, going from absolutely dominating our opposition to then trying to dig ourselves out of a hole. Kat, with your coaching hat on, how do you go about trying to encourage greater consistency from your players on court? How do you do it?
I think one of the hardest things to do is recreate situations that happen on court. Being put under immense pressure when you are down 10 is really hard to create mentally, but it's the very thing that you need to try and do. I mean, we've spoken a lot about some of these girls getting on court. Liv Cheen having a couple of 60-minute hits, I think is outstanding and really beneficial for England netball going forward. So I think there are times where there was a lot of times, I think it was in game 2, where she just was not available. No one could find her. That was the game that Pittman was on, and she couldn't find her either. And then she got taken off, and then Nat Metcalf slowly started to find her a little bit easier, but that starts to affect how much service there is into the shooters, ultimately affecting how many goals they've scored. And then you've got down the other end, you've got quite a young defensive end trying to contest in the air constantly. Is something that's quite hard. So I think there's a little bit of structural issue about what the game plan actually was, or what the outcome they were looking for that wasn't score based. I think there was a little bit of confusion there. But also it's time. It's just time. These girls, they're getting exposed to international netball. I mean, you spoke about how many caps England have. I think those all belong to Jade Clark.
Yeah, pretty much.
And so the more that they get on court, the more they'll start to understand what it feels like to be in these positions. And I'm not talking just about the bad ones. I'm talking about the good ones. So when they are on top, is trying to stay there and stay consistent and just keep the scoreboard pressure on the other team. And they showed that they would just let it slip, like 5 goals in a row. And it's like, holy hell, you can't do that against Jamaica. So yeah, just little learnings, I think, will be really good. And I'm really, really interested to see how they take some of these going forward into the quad series, because completely different opposition, but the pressure remains the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, I suppose a concern that a lot of fans have, and I've seen a lot of talk on Twitter in particular, was that we were sort of just able to get ourselves over the line on this one and take the series. But Jamaica were at 60-70% capacity, and they were missing their 2 starting 7 defenders. Pam, do you think that there is an air of concern that we were really put through our paces when Jamaica were missing both Wilson and Sterling and Thomas?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, because you play what's in front of you, and I think it wasn't a strong, in terms of all those players that were missing, a Jamaican side, like their top, what we saw at the Commonwealth Games. It wasn't that side, but it was something still different. But it was the same with England. We're also missing Ellie Cardwell. Jo Harton, her injury isn't 100% fixed yet. Still trying out different combinations. And I've never seen a side of England side without a Juvenmental. And so for her not to even be in the 12 for those first 2 games, that's different in itself again. So I think we should be confident in the terms that they were able to get this series win, because England have gone out to Jamaica in the past and not come back with a win, or even on home soil, like Lucy was saying right at the start. So be confident that they were able to ride that pressure, and they were able to put out some really great performance from some of the youngsters, but also some of the more experienced players. And we'll see from the quad series whether that momentum will continue to grow, and they step up into that next level against the likes of Australia and New Zealand, and a South Africa team that's now got Norma Plummer back at the helm. And we know what kind of confidence she can bring to a team. So yes, I understand some of the concerns that people had in terms of the scoreline, and me the same. I was on the edge of my seat at times, thinking this game should have been put to bed. But there's so many variables in a game of netball, and at the end of the day, they won, and they played some really good netball at times.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm really conscious of time. We've got a few more questions that we'd really like to ask. If you're able to hang about, if you're not able to, then we can just do a really quick wrap up. But you able to stay another sort of 5-10 minutes, Pam, Cat?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, all good.
Yes, legends. I mean, you mentioned the youngsters there, Pam. I think you can't help but think of Liv Cheen when you talk about the youngsters. And for me, I think she was robbed of player of the series. Personally, for England, I would have absolutely given it to her. And if you look at the shooting stats overall for this series, they were exceptional. And all the shooters, bar Beckford, shot at a minimum of 94% in any of the 3 tests. For England, the overall shooting percentage was 95%. They had 194 out of 203 shots, and for Jamaica, 172 out of 181, also at 95%. Both teams only missing 9 goals throughout the 3 test series. That's just 3 goals per game. I mean, these extraordinary shooting percentages, I mean, both of you two as shooters are very well placed to answer this. Is this just the new norm? Like, is this the minimum expectation that we have now for shooters?
It's crazy stats.
So crazy.
As a shooter, I was loving it. I think where the changes come is it's now more professional. The athletes have more time to spend under the post. And you could almost see that from Beckford's lower level, full-time in work. Potentially, she's not a professional athlete. She's playing over in Jamaica in a one of their, I think it's parish teams, they call them. So not as much time, I would imagine, being able to get under the post. Whereas your likes of Helen, your Joes, your SDLs, your Fowler, where this is your job, and you're in a full-time program, or you're in a professional or semi-professional team, you've got more time to practice. And a shot, I don't know, Kat, if you could say it, it's a closed skill. The more you do it, the more you practice, the more you run against different defenders. And when you're under fatigue, the more you get better at it. That's the only way you can get those percentages up.
What do you think, Kat? What do you think's contributed to this kind of, because it's not just this test series that we've seen these really high shooting percentages. I'd say over the last maybe 12 or so months, like globally, we're seeing a much higher average shooting percentages. Do you think that shooters are just going for those higher percentage shots? Or, you know, are they working it closer to goal? Like, what do you think's contributed to the rise in this kind of global shooting statistic, if you will?
I think it's exactly what Pam said. It's such a professional outfit now that you do have the time to practice under different conditions, whether it's fatigue, rubbish pass, you got to catch it and shoot anyway. Just being able to shoot over hands, step forward, step back. Susan Prattley used to step around the bloody post. I don't know what she was doing, but she taught herself how to do it, you know, because that is our job as shooters, is to get the ball in the hole. So I think it's really cool to see it's not just the stats, but it's actually the attempts at goal that are rising, which is really, really awesome to see, because that shows real good service into the circle and a nice clean pass. So it's really good that the bar has been raised. So imagine back when we were playing, if you shot at 85, it was like pretty good, and now it's just okay. So I'm glad I don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, I feel you there. I mean, I'm lucky if I get 70% sometimes in my local league games, so I am not one to talk. But yeah, as I mentioned, Liv was a complete standout for me, and we spoke to her in the post-match afterwards and said, you know, you're playing with such a maturity and such a capability that's, you know, should be well beyond your years and experience in terms of the number of caps that she has. Pam, how impressive is it for someone of her age and inexperience in terms of her senior caps to be able to put out a shift like she did with, what, two 60-minute games back to back?
So impressive, Lucy. So impressive. I'm really proud of her and what she's done. And I think it's come about from those around her. I think she was sat on the bench for London Pulse, just waiting to get her chance. And when she did get those odd games, she'd come on and do what she needed to do. But then last season was that breakout one, wasn't it? Where she was number one on the team sheet at goal shooter. So she knew that she had confidence that she was going to play. And so she didn't have to worry about that. She could just focus on her play and on her shot. And I think that experience in Super League, that game time in Super League really helped to develop and hone those skills. And then when she's then put into an England squad, she still believes in herself. She believes that she can do that job and do that job well, and she should be on that court. And then she's just flying now. So, I can only see her get even better and better. And like I said on comms, like that game face she has, she doesn't smile. She just gets on with it. She'll get the ball. She doesn't even react to defenders. But, you know, inside she's having the time of her life, and she really loves the game. And you can really see that.
Yeah, and I think the standout thing for me is that she really played to her own strength. Like, her strength is being that really strong holding shooter, and she really just played that to perfection. She didn't try and do absolutely everything, running around taking every second pass. She just did her job, and she did it really, really well. And can't wait to see how she goes at Pulse this year. And I think we have to touch on as well, just before we wrap up, obviously it was huge for netball to be on free-to-air TV. So a massive shout out to BBC and everyone at England Netball for making this happen. Kat, obviously with your experience in the Super League and the exposure of netball in the UK, how important is this as a step forward for our game?
I think it was hugely important, especially, and forgive me, but following the Commonwealth Games.
Yeah.
I think that, it was a rough campaign for England netball. And I thought it was critical that this game did sell out. And I thought it was important for netball fans and netball lovers and sport actually in the UK to make sure that this was a huge success. And they did so. Manchester sounded like a humongous party, and the Copper Box sold out. So I thought it was amazing, and I thought the girls really played to what they could hear there, and I think it was really great for the sport. And I do hope it does continue going into the Super League, because getting a lot more exposure and making it look like the party that it is on TV, because obviously I could only watch it on TV and it looked good. It looked like I wanted to go. That's what we need to keep doing. We can't keep complaining about it. We just have to take what we're given, and you get a couple games free to air with Super League, but then you kind of need to go and take your bums to these games and make sure that everybody gets a chance at seeing our sport and that we really highlight it, because it's awesome.
Yeah, completely agree. Go ahead, Pam.
Yeah, just really, and being there in the venues, it was a party.
Yeah.
it was rocking, and that adds to the atmosphere. And netball should be a show sport. Gone are the days where it's one man and his dog, or one woman and their dog at the venue watching. It's now a spectacle that people want to come and watch, and that's why these venues sold out. And if we can keep showing it on TV, it's free to air, whether BBC or Sky. It's so fab that both of them are jumping on board, because they know how special our game is. And so for that to be shown and be given that airtime, because it does cost. And unfortunately, netball isn't at the ranks of football and rugby and all those other sports. We're still growing, and we're still trying to make our game professional. And the more people, like Kat said, can actually get to games live and watch, that's ticket sales. That adds to it, and then that brings more sponsorship, and then we can make our game professional.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think that there was a lot of I would say negativity around the fact that the curtain raiser matches weren't streamed. But like you say, Pam, we're no longer in a position where this is like one man and his camera, and you can just set up a camera on the sidelines and stream it. And actually, I would question whether that would almost be more detrimental to the sport to put out something that didn't do us justice, didn't do a good service to the sport, and made it look a lower quality than what it actually is. Our time absolutely will come for these curtain raiser matches to be broadcast. We're just not quite there yet, but as long as we keep pushing and we keep asking the right questions, I think that's kind of all we can do. And I know that there was also a lot of chatter around sort of why it wasn't streams, but there must be all sorts of complexities with broadcast rights and agreements and all sorts of things that I have absolutely no idea about, because I don't have any experience in it. But obviously, Pam, with your experience as part of the commentary team, is there anything you can share with us from that perspective, and maybe how far away we are from having the likes of our curtain raiser games being streamed?
I wouldn't be able to give you an answer on that in terms of how far away we are. But what I can say is what I see from being in that part of the broadcast team is how many people it takes to put on that show and make it available for us, from cameras to producers to editors to the sound guys to just there's such a big team to getting the trucks to all the equipment. It costs a lot, And both broadcasters, both Sky and BBC, they say if we had the funding, we would for sure put more games on for everyone. And I saw some of the comments saying the cameras were filming the warm-up games. And yes, they were filming them, but it was to practice. They were doing the last quarter so that the director and the camera crew could practice, so that when it came to the main event, it was of that top quality that everyone expects when they see it on TV.
Interesting. Didn't know that.
I think we all need to take a step back and really maybe give respect to the players that actually get the opportunity to play. I mean, we're all crying about not being able to see it, but man, there's men's netball, there's England, there's the futures. Scotland came over and they got some good game time too. I think we're all getting a little bit selfish, wondering how we can see it. And there's distances, yeah? You can't get to all the games. I totally understand that. That's absolutely fine. But these guys given the opportunity to actually take the court on a real court with, and just I've been on situations like that. I've been like, man, I really want to play under these lights one day with the crowd full. It's so cool for them to get that exposure. It's men's netball, for goodness sake. They actually got a little series against some of the best netballers that England has and the Scottish Thistle. So it was an event for them, and it's really cool. And they all learned from that. And I'm just so I didn't get to see it either, but I know it would have been such a good experience for them.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, I might have made myself slightly unpopular with the netball world by sort of saying this, but absolutely, I will always encourage people's passion and their commitment to asking for more for our sport. But I also think there was possibly a bit of naivety around the whole sort of broadcast setup and, not just being able to whack a camera up and stream it as much as we'd like to. So yeah, I think that's a really balanced view from you there, Kat. I know we've struggled, unfortunately, to get Rob on speaker today, but bless him, he has been listening. He says that he's been really enjoying the chat, so thank you, Pam and Kat. And I think, Lucy, he sent through some thoughts.
Yeah, I've got some of those. Yeah, unfortunately, Twitter is not playing ball for some reason. But Rob has said both teams struggle to win ball consistently, and as you spoke out, both teams lack the ability to back a great quarter up the next quarter. He said certainly England were the better team, which I'm sure is probably difficult for him to say being an Australian. And he said they were better for longer, which I totally agree with as well. And he's also sent in his player of the series from each team, which I know we're going to move on to next, Luce. And he said for England, he loved Liv Cheen, and Janelle Fowler for Jamaica was the standout for him.
Well, there you go. Well, that is how we were going to wrap up today. We were going to ask all three of you, so you, Pam and Kat now, if you could just have a little think about who you would class as player of the series for both nations. Obviously, Layla Gusketh got the official title, the queen that she is, and I think she did have a cracking series. For me, personally, just to give you guys some thinking time, I completely agree with Rob. I think Liv Cheen, from an England perspective, was just absolute standout. I think it's impossible to look past her, given her age, her inexperience in the senior side. And she was just phenomenal. And I think for Jamaica, I would actually give it to Katie-Ann Dehaney. I think this is the best that we've seen her play for a long time. And I think if she can continue this form and this level of performance in SSN next year, then yeah, that'll be fantastic for her. Who would you go for, Luce? Who's your player of the series from each team?
Yeah, well, I, from a Jamaica perspective, would have to agree with you 100% about Katie-Ann Dehaney. I think she was top of the class on pretty much all the stats. She played almost every minute, I think, for Jamaica in that goalkeeper position. And I think she has a really tough job because she sat behind Shamira Sterling internationally. And actually, if she was representing any other country, she'd probably be in the starting 7. But it's just really unfortunate that she sat behind. Similar story with Shimona Nelson as well, up the other end for Jamaica. But yeah, definitely KD for Jamaica. And then my pick for England is actually Imogen Allison. I think this was a real solidification for her in terms of what she put out at the Commonwealth Games and what we all started to really see from her. And I think she's booked a ticket to South Africa with this performance.
Yeah, I think we very much saw the kind of baby Serena vibes in this series.
I love that. There was one time when she lost the ball, or she threw the ball away, or some error happened, and then immediately she won it back straight away. And I was like, this is looking familiar, guys. I'm getting some deja vu here. So yeah, no, I loved Imo. I thought she was fab this series.
Yeah. Well, Pam, I'm going to pick on you first. Who is your player of the series for England and Jamaica?
Well, I'm actually going to go with the player of the series with Layla Guscott. I think she was a workhorse. She was a leader in that defensive end, whether it was at wing defence, which we haven't seen her play there for England at all. I know she's played at club level, and for her to just be able to switch and be so effective at both, I thought was really good. She just quietly goes about her business and still really effective and efficient. Liv would have been a very close second for me, definitely. And Jamaica would be hands down Fowler. She had the weight on her shoulders. Without Wilson, without Sterling, without Thomas, her team were just relying on her, and she stepped up to the mark. And you really can't fault her.
Yeah. You want. It's actually frustrating how incredibly good she is. Like, you really just can't fault her. She is an absolute queen. Kat, what about you?
Yeah, look, in an effort not to pick Janelle, because she is incredible. She gets all the awards in every country. So I'm just going to avoid that, but only because I think she's phenomenal. And I feel like Katie Andahaney did amazing in the series. I want to say Jodie Ann Ward. I thought she is a workhorse. She was out the front, just absolutely making everybody's life hell. She came through for some awesome intercepts on the circle edge that weren't for her. I thought she did really well. I thought she was quite consistent when she was on the court. I think to save legs and kind of get through the weekend of netball, she was taken off the court a couple times. But I just, every time she was on, she was in everything. I just really enjoyed watching her. And again, with Katie Andahaney, doesn't get a lot of court time because Latanya Wilson is always there as well. So I think she took her opportunity and she stood out for me. And with England, I think, Liv Cheen she stood up when she needed to. She came on in the end of the first game and was really shaky, and it looked like it was going to be a kind of rough series for her. She started the next one and was just unstoppable from there. And she was taking some long shots. She was under all sorts of pressure, I think external pressure as well, because she has to show what she's made of, because there is such a huge issue in that circle of who's going to go. And she stood up to it. And I really want to see her play against a couple of different styles, because we haven't seen a lot of that from her. So, I'm excited about this quad series again to see how she can handle some of the different defensive styles she's going to come up against.
Yeah, bring on quad series. Well, we really want to know all of your guys' thoughts as well. Who would you pick as your player of the series for both nations? We've actually just released a little graphic for you guys listening, so you can get involved in the conversation as well. You're welcome to reply to the graphic on Twitter and let us know who you would pick as your player of the series, or you can save it, head over to Instagram, pop it on your story and tag the players themselves and us, and we'll obviously share it. We'll just try and share as many as we can. A huge thank you to all of you for tuning in. I know there was a huge number of you who set your reminders for this, so it's amazing to be able to welcome you. And a massive thank you to our special guest, Rob. Thank you as well, even though we couldn't get you on the mic. Thank you for listening to the whole thing, sending your thoughts in. We are going to get Rob on an episode this season, aren't we, Luce? For sure.
100%. You're already booked, Rob. Clear your diary.
You're already booked. But yeah, thank you, Pam and Kat, for your contributions and your insight. We absolutely love hearing from you. Next up in terms of international netball, of course, is quad series. We don't have long to wait. I think is it this weekend? It's starting
it's actually
Saturday,
this weekend,
I believe. Oh my
Yep.
Lord, how that has happened, I don't know. And we're delighted to say that we'll be releasing our Quad Series mini-series again this year. We've got part 1 featuring Dame Knowles and Stacey Marinkovic is coming out on Thursday this week. So stay tuned for that. And then we'll have part 2 coming out a few days after the conclusion of Quad Series. So big thank you again. Keep the conversations going. Get in touch. Let us know who your play the series are for both teams. And a massive thank you once again to our wonderful speakers. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Good night, everyone.
Cheers,
Bye.
guys. Take care.